Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find our work on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. We have a phenomenal show for you guys today. First and foremost, a pair of Penguins hit career milestones over the weekend. We'll tell you who hit those milestones and why they are integral to the Penguins returning to the postseason in 2026. And then, well, we're in the final week of the 2024-25 season, and yet the Penguins draft position can still change dramatically over the next handful of days. And we'll close things out with part two of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh end of season awards. Let's get started on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. And let's kick things off with a couple of Penguins that have now reached career highs this season. First and foremost, it's Bryan Rust scoring goal number 29, his new career high. And then it's Rickard Rakell, who scored goal number 35 in Sunday's loss to the Boston Bruins. Both of those now career highs for the Penguins' top wingers. Like I mentioned, Rust did it with an empty net goal in Jersey, and Rax did it with the lone goal in Boston. If you look at the points, they're both inching towards that as well. Rust actually has an inch towards it. He's blown past it. He is 5 points past his career high in points now at 63, and Rickard Rakell is tied for his career high in points at 69. So some history being made by Rickard Rakell and Bryan Rust. Now, the question that I have for you today, Horwat, is agree or disagree if the Penguins, and this is a major if, and we all expect it to be, but again, things can change. If the Penguins are eyeing the playoffs in 2026, they have to retain both Bryan Rust and Rickard Rakell.
No, I don't think so. That's not a necessity to make the playoffs, I think. Especially if they're going for it. We know it's the massive if. However, with the way that those two are playing at this very moment, and still with a little bit of term left on their deal, maybe it's more of a deadline move than it is an off-season move, but you could sell high on those players. You could sell high on one of them. Definitely not both. I think with the production that they're showing now, you could sell high on one of them and bring back a key piece that might be able to outperform what you're getting from them, or maybe bring something more something different to the team, but it's not necessarily crucial to the success of the team. I think that by all means you can move on from one of them and still make the playoffs. It is just a matter of how the rest of the team lines up. Mm-hmm. If they're rolling with essentially the same lineup into next season, then you're going to need them both, just because you had them both this year at the top of their game and couldn't do much. But I do believe, depending on how the rest of the lineup shakes up, you don't need both of them around to make the playoffs. If that's what they're doing in 2026, I think you can find success, nil one of them.
See, I think that it's possible. So, I'm not entirely in the camp of agree here, but I think it is possible. But I think that if you're trying to make the playoffs, I don't want to say safest, because you're going to have to take some risks if you're Kyle Dubas this offseason. But the path looks a lot more clear if you have both Bryan Rust and Rickard Rakell on your roster. So I agree with the statement that we made. I disagree with you in general. I think that when you look at the Penguins roster this year, yes, you got Bryan Rust to have a career year. Yes, you're getting Rickard Rakell on a career year. And yes, both of them are over the age of 30, so there is no guarantee that one or both of them replicate what we saw this season or come anywhere close to what we saw this season. There's never a guarantee in that. But when I look at the Penguins roster, they're already down a top winger, and they've played that way all season long. They never replaced Jake Guentzel, right? You can say that Rickard Rakell's ability to score 35 goals this season helped replace Jake Guentzel. Okay, who replaced Rickard Rakell in the lineup? Nobody, right? Phil Tomasino for a time, Cody Glass for a time, but none of them really reached the heights of a top six winger. So I think that when you're already down a top winger, and that's a position you're going to need to fill if you want to make the playoffs in 2026, trading away one of these two guys just creates another hole. And then while you can swing big, you can go get Mitch Marner, you could go get JJ Peterka, you could go get a Trevor Zegras. You can make those big swings, but the odds of hitting on more than one aren't too great. The odds of hitting on one, while knowing that you have Rust and Rakell who have worked in this organization, in Mike Sullivan's system, alongside Sidney Crosby, I think that's where I get to the safer side of the bet when it comes to the top six for the Penguins. And yeah, maybe you don't have to swing big. Maybe Ville Koivunen ends up being a guy that can carry the load in the top six for an entire season. Maybe Rutger McGroarty is able to do that. But again, those are risks. Whereas I look at Rust and Rakell, and while like you mentioned, the trade value might never be higher, if you're trying to make the playoffs in 2026, their value to that team, to that season, is probably higher remaining with the team.
Yeah, I get that. I think I based my my position out of, you just don't know if you're getting this again from them.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee that Rickard Rakell becomes the anomaly in terms of Penguins history in the last 20 years, joining the likes of Chris Kunitz in guys that have led the team in goals. In Crosby Malkin era. For once, it's not going to be one of those two or Kunitz. It's going to be another new name, or Guentzel, I should say.
Yeah.
But for a long time, it was those two, and now we have a new name to discuss. You just don't know if you're going to get that kind of thing again. Same with Bryan Rust, really. As much as he is still improving and finding ways to produce as he ages, you don't know if you're getting another near 30-goal season out of him.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the rest of the lineup building will have to come into play to help my argument a bit. But for what it's worth, you just don't know if you're going to get this again. And that's kind of what makes me believe, yeah, you just because of that, you don't necessarily need them around for a playoff run. You just aren't sure. You can find a sure thing somewhere to make it a bit more likely. Again, it is all impossible to tell without seeing how the rest of the lineup divvies up. I mean, who knows what this defense looks like next season? Who knows what the goaltending looks like next season? We know the forward core. We know the names that could be in the forward core. That's almost certain. You don't know how much moving and shaking Kyle Dubas wants to do with the forward group, especially if it is time for the kids to make their move. But for the most part, there's going to be a lot of changes on the back end. And I think, sure, one of the two of Bryan Rust and Rakell will definitely be important to a playoff run. I think the rest of the lineup might end up being a bit more of a swing for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, this conversation is happening in a vacuum. This conversation is happening with an eye towards 2026 alone. Now, obviously, Kyle Dubas is being paid to not just take care of the Penguins in 2026, but to be the basis for building through 2027 and so on and so forth. But in a vacuum, if you are trying to make the playoffs, I just think that it's more likely that Rust or Rakell can replicate this, maybe not to this level, maybe not career highs again in 2026, but they can replicate this level of performance again versus it's more likely than a Trevor Zegras coming in and all of a sudden giving you this type of production with a new team, considering the fact that he already needs to bounce back a little bit because he isn't having the most statistically eye-popping season. We all expect there to be talent there and potentially there to be a fit there, but for him to come in and give you that type of production, I think for 2026 alone, it's more likely that you're going to get a higher or better result out of keeping keeping both of Rust and Rakell. But if we do open this up out of that little narrow focus of 2026, try to make the playoffs, then yeah, you bring in a guy that's 23, 24 years old and Trevor Zegras, you probably have a higher likelihood of hitting on that as time goes on versus two guys that are over the age of 30 and right now are probably as valuable in the eye of the league as they will be for the remainder of their career. So it's an unenviable position that Kyle Dubas is in because he has to toe that line. He has to look towards the future. But let's face it, the timeline is getting rushed because these superstars that he has been told to honor, he has been told to give as many opportunities as humanly possible, are running out of those opportunities. Evgeny Malkin could be done as early as the end of next season. We don't know. Kris Letang's time in Pittsburgh, who knows where that goes? We'll get to him in a little bit when we talk Team Norris. But I think that this is going to be one of the top 3 most important decisions of Kyle Dubas' offseason. 1 is Karlsson, 2 is goaltending, and what he does with Rust and Rakell is number 3 in my eyes.
Yeah, it's a big decision. It could very well be a no decision, though. That the right choice might be doing nothing, and it's at least a quick decision for number 3. We know a Karlsson decision will not be quick whatsoever. We know a goaltending decision won't be easy whatsoever. It might be a little quicker, but it won't be easy. Mm-hmm. And we know this could very well be a quick decision. It could very well be much in the way that he treated the deadline with Rakell, I'm going to hold out for the best offer possible, and you need to literally way overpay for the guy. And that could go for both of them, especially Rust, but by way of just his longevity with the team already and the way the organization views Bryan Rust as a player and as a person. So it's going to take some big offers to sway Kyle Dubas, unless he changed his mind since then, or maybe not changed his mind, but changed his approach, changed his ask. Those are still to be seen going forward.
Yeah, and the market could have changed as well. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when talking about these two, and I'm sure it will be one of the top conversations on the docket for us and everybody in Pittsburgh over the next several months. Now, as far as milestones are considered, the Penguins do have 1 game left on Thursday at home at PPG Paints Arena against the Washington Capitals, and there's a handful of players that could reach a couple of interesting milestones. Sidney Crosby, of course, 1 point away from number 90 on the season. Bryan Rust 1 goal away from that elusive 30-goal season, and Erik Karlsson is 2 points back as of right now from finishing top 10 in defensive scoring around the NHL. So we'll keep our eyes on those 3 players. And also there's always milestones that come out of the woodwork with this Penguins team. So potentially we could get another one on Thursday, but we'll have to dig through the archives, dig through the stat sheets and see if there's anything else. And we'll let you know before that game on Thursday. Let's move over and talk a little bit about what else could be on the line this Thursday and this week as well, because a lot of people last week of the season, they might be getting ready to check out. They might be getting ready to set up tee time. Shoot, these Penguins players probably already have their flights booked to Cabo or Bora Bora, or, in Sid's case, just back to Nova Scotia and then Europe probably. But there's still something and a lot of interesting things that could happen over this week that has to deal with the Pittsburgh Penguins and their draft plans. Shout out to Matt Meager, who is at Flux_CC on Twitter. He threw this up there on Sunday, following the Penguins' loss to the Boston Bruins, that the Penguins are now guaranteed to finish in the bottom 10 of the National Hockey League. Now, they are not guaranteed a top 10 pick because the draft could push them back as far as 2 spots. But as of right now, and Matt highlighted this perfectly, and we'll go through the scenarios, could finish anywhere between 5th and 9th worst in the National Hockey League. If they want to finish 5th, they have to lose to Washington. Philadelphia needs to win one of its final 2 games, and the Seattle Kraken have to win tonight against the LA Kings. If they want to finish 6th, they have to lose to Washington, and then one of Philadelphia or Seattle ends up winning a game while the other loses the remainder. For pick 7, Penguins once again have to lose to Washington, and then Philly and Seattle have to both lose out, which keeps Pittsburgh still ahead of those 2 teams. Pick 8 is if Pittsburgh wins against Washington on Thursday, Philly and Seattle both lose out, and then one of Buffalo or Anaheim loses out while the other wins at least one game. And then, of course, pick 9, Pittsburgh wins over Washington, and then all 4 of the other teams that we've mentioned all lose out. That's Philly, Seattle, Buffalo, and Anaheim. So that's a lot to throw at you. And these will start to get knocked down as the week goes on. Like we mentioned, Seattle plays their final game tonight. Win or lose, it changes the outcomes of those possibilities and what could happen. But when you look at this, pick 5, well, I guess not pick 5, 5th slot, because we still have the lottery where the Penguins can move up or they can move down. 5th slot versus 9th slot. Which scenario do you see playing out over the next handful of days?
Well, I don't know if I see the Penguins winning. So immediately I jump to 5, 6, and 7 just because Washington's hit a skid and they need some sort of momentum at all going into the postseason. As good as they've played all season, they suddenly, I think a lot of it could be not having Logan Thompson around. They suddenly need a win. All of it. I mean, not that they don't need a win to get in, but they just need some good mojo going into the postseason. Yeah, Ovechkin did the thing, but they lost that game pretty handily. And they've gotten beaten pretty handily since. So they need something good. I think they're gonna. I don't know about torment the Penguins, but I could see them just treating it as the true game one and bulldozing them. As for the rest, that's tough. I bet Seattle wins a game or two.
They only got one game left.
I could see them winning.
It's them in LA, and LA's been locked into Edmonton for like 5 years now.
Yeah, I'm used to just kind of saying a game or two. There has been so much of the season left for so long now. It's weird being in the last week. That being said, yeah, I also think LA might just kind of take their foot off the gas for tonight. I mean, they know they got Edmonton. They've known that for months. Heck, they've known it for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So I could see them giving some rests, giving some much needed time off the ice before ramping up into the Oilers yet again, where they need to finally break through. So I could see Seattle also winning, which is looking good for the Penguins so far, right? Yeah. I could see 6. I don't know what Philly's got for the rest of the way, but to not continue dragging this out. Good things just don't happen to the Penguins sometimes. So best case scenario also seems off the table. So I'll take pick 6.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years, really, the Penguins have needed some help in the last week of the season, and they haven't gotten it. Now, this is an entirely different situation. It's not help to get into the playoffs. It's help to get a much better draft pick. But to me, I think the most realistic option here is pick number 8. Simply because, gut feeling, I think the Penguins beat the Washington Capitals. They aren't playing well, but they've already locked up the division. They've already locked up the top seed in the conference. Are they going to play all of their players? I mean, this is a conversation for Spencer Carberry and our friends over at the Caps Chirp podcast. But I think that the Penguins, for some reason, sneaking suspicion, you can call it, gut feeling, I think the Penguins beat Washington on Thursday, which leans towards them having probably one of 8 or 9 in these scenarios that Matt has laid out. I don't think either Buffalo or Philly win out. I think their next game for both of them are against teams that have something to play for. So I think they will win. And then, of course, Buffalo plays Philly at the end of the week. So somebody has to win and somebody has to lose in that one. And then Anaheim, I think, gets at least one win. They got 2 games left. I think they'll be able to pick one up, which means the Penguins will finish in 8th place, which, listen, it's the best opportunity they've gotten to move up in a draft in a long time. And if they finish there, they are guaranteed at the very least to finish with the 10th overall pick at worst. Now, as far as that second first rounder that they could potentially have, the New York Rangers, unfortunately, will not finish any lower than 13th, which means the fate of that pick is in the hands of Chris Drury and company. To me, there have been some rumors, there have been some speculations that, hey, well, they're going to keep that pick because they don't expect to be as bad next year. So they're guaranteed to keep that pick. To me, when I look at it, I'm like, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it has everything to do with the fact that they made it top 13 protected in the first place. That's where they said, if we fall this far, we want to still be able to take the pick. So that to me just tells, like, and what has changed between the trades that happened in February and now? Are they okay all of a sudden being 13th worst team in the NHL? No. So to me, again, we don't know until we know, and they have a long time to decide on this. But to me, I don't think we're going to end up seeing the Penguins pick twice in the first round this year, unless they pull off a trade early in the offseason in order to get a pick. But I don't think that Rangers first rounder is coming to Pittsburgh until 2026.
Yeah, it just depends on how the Rangers, want to do some crowd control all of a sudden. The drama level in New York is back again for the 4th time this season. There was Trouba. Well, first there was Barclay Goodrow in the offseason. Then there was Trouba. Then there was the Igor Shesterkin thing. And now there was little smatterings of the Capo Caco situation, Zach Jones, and I'm missing one more.
Calvin DeHaan recently.
And that's what I'm getting to. And then more recently, Calvin DeHaan with his comments that things are getting ugly in New York, and that front office needs to do crowd control. I mean, they're probably going to fire Laviolette. That'll be step 1. And then getting back on the right train of getting the fans back into it. Listen, you're the New York Rangers. You're not going to lose those fans, but you got to have them happy with you. And right now, it doesn't seem like the players are. So we'll see what the fans decide to do. and they need some good mojo. So whatever that means with that first round pick, good mojo wise, hard to tell. We'll see what the Rangers are thinking. But I might be with you on that. In the Penguins probably aren't seeing that pick until next year. It just depends what the Rangers want to do. They're in such a fascinating spot that if they want to sell, if they even want to keep it and trade it, no, I guess they can't do that. Sorry, stupid me. But you get what I'm saying. It's tough what the position they're in. But they could use that little boost of, all right, here's what happened this season, guys. Here's a first round pick. Like here's a prospect to look forward to.
Yeah, it just feels like the more and more that we see of the Rangers, the more and more dysfunctional they are, which honestly, listen, they're called the Broadway Blue Shirts. Obviously, you're going to get drama with the New York Rangers, but it feels like that drama is going to end in the Penguins landing a 2026 first rounder, which again, you would have liked to have that this year. You would have liked to have that flexibility and that capability to go out there and utilize it as Kyle Dubas sees fit. But at the end of the day, I mean, maybe the Rangers are a little bit better next year, but do we expect them to bounce back to what they were? Like, let's not forget, they were a President's Trophy winning team that made it to the conference finals last year, which is at this point almost unheard of for any President's Trophy winner, but they made it to the conference finals. Now they choked once they got there, but this is a team that was one of the best in the NHL last year. All of a sudden, they're the 13th worst this year, but it feels like all of that success was built on a very shaky foundation. And we're seeing this year that if it doesn't all go according to plan, if Igor Shesterkin isn't an all-world Vezina caliber goaltender, things can happen and the bottom can fall out. And we saw that happen for the Rangers this year. If it happens again next year and the Penguins have their 2026 first, it's just one more kick of the can and Gavin McKenna. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. Let's close out this episode with part 2 of our end of season awards. We asked you, the listeners, on our YouTube channel, Tip of the Ice-Burgh, to vote on Team Norris and Most Improved over the weekend. And we have the results here. Remember, you guys, your results of this poll is 1 vote. We each get a vote on this show. But if it's a tie, the tie goes to the listener. So let's go to Team Norris to kick things off. Matt Grzelcyk is the fan-voted Team Norris trophy winner for the Penguins, and the voting was not particularly close. Matt Grzelcyk finishes with 66% of the vote for Team Norris from our listeners. Erik Karlsson finishes in second with 14%. Other Horwat finishes in third with 11%, and Kris Letang finishes in fourth with 10. Now, before I send it over to you for your pick, other seems to be most people saying Owen Pickering. It was either Owen Pickering or Marcus Pettersson. And since we're not going to give it to somebody that didn't spend the last 25% of the season with the team, we'll say other is Owen Pickering, who gets now that 11%.
I was coming up with this was tough. Like I mentioned, with what the defense could look like next year, it could be totally different. In this season, it was Erik Karlsson or Kris Letang not playing at the top of their game. I did not realize Karlsson was that close to top 10 in scoring for defensemen, though.
Yeah, 2 points off. He has 53 right now. 10th is 55.
And if you would have told me, hey, you're getting Erik Karlsson to be a top 10 defensive point scorer, I'd say that makes sense for his age. It feels a little uglier now that we see it. That just goes to show how good Erik Karlsson has been over the course of his career. But when it comes down to it this year, yeah, I alluded to it last episode. Just copy paste everything I said about Matt Grzelcyk, or everything you said about Matt Grzelcyk, then and punch it in now. Just because, first of all, no one expected that sort of season from him. No one expected that sort of production, and here we are sitting here before the last game of the season and saying, "Yep, that was the best defense the Penguins had to offer this year." I mean, also truly, who else would we have given this award to this year? Not those two I just mentioned. I mean, like you said, Marcus, 3-time winner Marcus Pettersson, probably not because he's not here anymore. And same with Owen Pickering to a degree. I mean, he is obviously still here, and I know I gave Vezina to a guy that did not play a single game in the NHL this year.
Yeah.
But Owen Pickering is back in the A, continuing to get ready for a playoff run. And I like that choice just because it's off the wall, like I went with Vezina. But for what it's worth, I was impressed. We were impressed with Matt Grzelcyk this year. So I think that is just the correct direction to go in.
Yeah, Owen Pickering only played, if I'm not mistaken, 25 games at the NHL level this season. But in those 25 games, not only did he show that he currently, without any more growth, is a NHL caliber defenseman. I mean, third pairing, he can play. He can go out there and play third pairing minutes any day against any opponent, and I'm comfortable with Owen Pickering in that spot. He was also pushed a little bit when he was thrown up on a line with, or a pairing with, Kris Letang. And honestly, it was a sink or swim situation. I thought he did pretty good. Yeah, did he have a couple of rough games here and there? 100%. But he's a young defender that still needs to fill out the remainder of his body. He's a big kid. He utilized that size a little bit, and I think we all saw that. But he needs to fill out a little bit more, and I think he just needs to kind of sharpen up the edges. Now, some of that could be done at the NHL level, but as the Penguins decided, they thought maybe he needs to go back down to the AHL, kind of round some things into form, and then come back up when he's fully ready. That's what Jason Spezza has said the plan is all along. They don't like players ping-ponging back and forth, but Owen Pickering was a necessity midway through this season. He came up and he played really well. So I think that the arrow is firmly pointed in the positive direction with Owen Pickering, and I love that he got some love from the listeners here in this poll, but I agree with you. It's Matt Grzelcyk. If you heard me talk about Matt Grzelcyk when we had the discussion about best first-year Penguin last week, I think that you would know that it's obvious that I'm going with Matt Grzelcyk. So that was your pick too, correct? So this is a clean sweep for Team Norris.
Yeah, that's it. I chose Grzelcyk for Norris as well, and I would have picked him too for the first season player, but I didn't want to repeat names on this year. So I went with the Connors last week, and this time around for Norris, it just makes perfect sense because, again, who else would it have gone to?
Yeah, now, if you didn't tune into last Thursday's episode, first of all, shame on you for 6 weeks. Second of all, what we talked about when we were discussing Grzelcyk last Thursday was the fact that he's integral to this power play's turnaround, right? It's not Karlsson. It's not Letang that turned this power play around at the point. It was Matt Grzelcyk being the facilitator, he only has one goal, so it's not like he's a sharpshooter up there. So he's having a great season. Not to mention the fact that he has a career high in points at 38. That's something else we could see potentially, is he gets to the 40-point plateau for the first time in his career. So I'm going to give it to Matt Grzelcyk as well. Kris Letang at the bottom of this list. That's a discussion for later in the summer. But I think rightly so. That's where I'll put it right now. It has been a rough year for 58 in black and gold. And as far as Erik Karlsson is concerned, it feels, the stats point to this, but just the overall feeling when I think back to his performance over this season, it feels like a carbon copy of last year, where it's not bad, right? There's been bad moments, definitely. Don't get me wrong. There have been times where you look at Karlsson and you say, how is this guy allowed to call himself a defenseman? That there have been times when that's happened throughout his entire career. And then there's been times where you look at him and you say, man, this guy is supremely talented. This is why he's going to be a Hockey Hall of Famer. This is shades of him in his peak in Ottawa. We've seen that, but it just hasn't been enough of the latter. It's been too much of the former. There's been too many peaks and too many valleys throughout the season. And at the end of the day, he's 3 points shy of what he had last year. And that was disappointing. We all knew coming off of a 103-point season that he wasn't going to replicate that, but we wanted 60 plus, 65 plus, 70 would have been great. But he finished with 56 last year, and he's at 53 this year, or 55 and 52 either way. Again, just not enough from Erik Karlsson. It's unfortunate because there are times where you watch him and you're like, there's only one player that can make those plays right now, and it's Erik Karlsson. It's just, we didn't see that consistently enough throughout the season.
For sure. Like I said, it's impressive just how good he has been over the course of his career, that going into it, if you would have told me, hey, Erik Karlsson's going to be top 10 or near top 10 in defensive scoring for these last 2 seasons, I'd go, heck yeah, that's pretty good. And then you look at the numbers and realize, or at least the vibes of it, and you go, oh, that actually isn't what it should be. When you said if he could get 70, that would make him the 4th highest scoring defenseman in the league right now, which, again, for an aging, no offense to him, but an aging Erik Karlsson, suddenly you think of him as the 4th highest scoring defensive league, and you go, oh, that's really good. But again, it's the numbers, and I get that things get skewed with blue liners, so it's a little tough. It's also really tough to keep up with the skill set that is this generation of defensemen. I mean, Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, Rasmus
Cale Makar has
Dahlin.
30 goals this year.
That's insane. Like, it's no one expects a defenseman to score 30, but Cale Makar is unreal. Zach Werenski has 22.
Yeah.
Talk about a franchise player over there. It's incredible the kind of career and the kind of things that Erik Karlsson has been able to do. And honestly, these mediocre seasons really make you consider that. I mean, obviously he's a multi-time Norris Trophy winner for a reason. And like I said, if you would have told me, so he's currently 12th, because there's 2 ahead of him tied with 55 points. If you would have told me, like, he's finishing 12th in scoring for defensemen, I go, all right, not realizing that really defensemen don't score as much as it seems. Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, and
there's a
Bouchard,
line.
They're unreal. It's pretty, and Lane Hudson this year, by the way, 6th.
Yeah.
Unreal. The defensive scoring is so weird, but it's a quick drop, and Erik Karlsson is part of that drop, unlike what he used to be.
And here's the other thing that plays into this. You're getting paid $10 million.
Oh,
you're getting paid to be in that top 10. And the thing is he's been right around. That's, again, barely getting by. Getting by as far as expectations wise. And you haven't made the playoffs in 2 years. And that is the end all be all in Pittsburgh now, is will you make the playoffs? Not just for the Penguins, but the Pirates and the Steelers. And now, of course, those are discussions for different podcasts. But no, I think Erik Karlsson, when you look at his time in Pittsburgh, it's not as bad as the internet would let you believe, but it's also still underwhelming and still hasn't met expectations, which is unfortunate for a guy that came in and you looked at it and you said, all right, this is what's going to get them back into the, at the very least, the second round of the playoffs, and it's just gone in the complete opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
Let's close out the episode with most improved, though. This is one that might be another clean sweep. Now, you could look at this in one of 2 ways. The way that we're going to look at this is the way that most actual voting is when it comes to most improved, and that is between last year and this year. And if that is the case, I completely agree with the listenership on this one. 78% of the vote goes to Rickard Rakell. We talked about him at the beginning of the episode. He is tied his career high in points. He has surpassed his career high in goals. All of this coming off of a year where in October, the sentiment on him was extremely poor. He had a year where his shoulder was messed up. He missed time throughout the year. He wore a brace throughout the remainder of the year. I mean, Kyle Dubas was reportedly very unhappy during certain games last year with Rickard Rakell yelling from his box at PPG Paints Arena. And you look at what he's turned into. One of the guys that everybody in the league, not just in Pittsburgh, but everybody in the league said, I can't believe Kyle Dubas didn't trade this guy, because everyone was interested. Everyone wanted Rickard Rakell. And Kyle Dubas did the thing that you mentioned earlier. And he said that the best course of action right now is no action with Rickard Rakell. All of that to say, I agree with 78% of the listenership. Rickard Rakell is my vote for most improved.
I mean, it has to be. It just has to be. Just looking at the last 3 seasons, you go, his 3 full seasons in Pittsburgh goes in 22, 23, 60 points in 82 games to 37 and 70, 69 and 80. I mean, yeah, that sort of bell curve, or the opposite of a bell curve, whatever that is quite good. That's exactly what the most improved award is made for. That's sort of, hey, you were really good. You dipped quite a bit, and you're back. Good to see you. It's that sort of trajectory, and honestly, it's better than any season he's put up before. It's verging on a career year. I mean, he's already got his goals pace. He's an assist behind the most assists he's had in the season. And obviously he's ready to surpass that for points. What more could you have asked for? Maybe in those same 3 years, he goes from a -5 to a +4 to a -22. I think we figured it out. But I was thinking we figured out maybe he stopped playing defense, and that's where this offense is coming from.
Well, the entire team stopped playing defense this year, so I think that's a safe assumption to make. But no, as far as Rickard Rakell is concerned, you know what else happened? You left him on the first line with Crosby all season. You didn't play with him. You didn't say, oh, well, now we need some bottom 6 scoring racks. Try to do it.
Yeah.
Well, Malkin needs a better winger. Rax, go try to do it. No, Rickard Rakell is at his best when he's playing with Sidney Crosby. That's not to say that he is completely a product of Sidney Crosby, because I know some people will take it that way, but that is not the way this is intended. But he gets the most out of his game when he's playing with Crosby. And that happens with a lot of players, right? Mm-hmm. That happened with Chris Kunitz. That happened with Jake Gensel to a lesser extent, because he was still very good with Evgeny Malkin, and you look at what he's doing now with Nikita Kucherov is ridiculous. So, but Rickard Rakell was given the opportunity to play consistently throughout a season with Sidney Crosby, and all he does is put up career highs. So, yes, Rickard Rakell has been great this year, coming off of a year last year where all of us were just smashing our head against the wall saying, this guy is better than this. We finally get to see the results of that. We get to see him bouncing back, and we get to see him have a phenomenal season. So he is the most improved. Again, 2 clean sweeps in part 2 of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh end of season awards. But Matt Grzelcyk finished in second of this voting with 15%. Like I mentioned, this is probably the most nominated player in all of these categories, and he's getting votes in all of them as well. So you have to give credit where credit is due, and you also have to look at that and say, maybe, just maybe, it's not a bad idea for the Penguins to retain old 24 going into next season. But 15% of the vote for Matt Grzelcyk, 6% of the vote for Philip Tomasino, and 1% go to other. As far as Matt Grzelcyk is concerned, this is the last I'll say on this. The guy was a healthy scratch down the stretch last year and into the playoffs for the Boston Bruins. And we just named him not 10 minutes ago as the best defenseman the Pittsburgh Penguins had this year. Now, again, the qualifications for that aren't as high, even with 2 future Hall of Famers on that blue line. But to go from what he was at the end of last year to what he is this year, which is somebody that deserves a new contract in Pittsburgh and may have priced himself out. Who knows? Somebody on the open market could overpay for Matt Grzelcyk. I think that is a drastic change in his career fortunes as well. A huge revival for Matt Grzelcyk this season.
Yeah, that's big. That's a big boost. When you do consider what he did with Boston to this year, by all means, it would also be deserving recipient of most improved year over year. So don't hate that choice either.
Now, to close it out, Phil Tomasino really quickly. 6 of his 10 goals are game winning. So I think a lot of this is the clutch gene.
Wow.
For Phil Tomasino. And I think the thing we can say about him is he showed very good spurts, right? There was that 2-week stretch where he scored like a goal and a half, I think. But I was raving because his 200-foot game was phenomenal. And him and Malkin were on the same wavelength. It was like a hive mind when the two of them were on the ice together. Now, he fell off a little bit. Then, of course, he suffered that injury that took him out for a couple games. He's back in the lineup now. But I think at the very least, he earned a spot on next year's team. I don't think he has to. I mean, obviously, if he bottoms out in training camp, somebody's going to take his place likely. But if he comes into training camp, he should be leader in the clubhouse for, at the very least, a third line spot. I think he's best suited as a bottom 6 guy, middle 6 if need be. Like if there's an injury, he can bump up. Probably the number 1 guy to bump up. But I liked what I saw out of Philip Tomasino. I'm not ready to give him the world as far as opportunity next year, but I think he deserves to come back, and I think he could be a key depth piece for a team that ends up vying for a playoff spot next year, depending on how all the other moves shake out in the Pens lineup.
By all means. His numbers are kind of hilarious to look at. In 11 games with Nashville before the trade, no goals and an assist. In the 49 since the trade, 10 goals, 11 assists for 21 points.
That's almost a 20-goal pace.
That's solid. That's unreal. And not to mention the 6 game-winning goals of 10 is also, that's laughable. That's laughably hilarious. And I have no other words for it other than, this kid is showing why he's deserving of these spots and of this position and of staying around for a bit of the future. I mean, let's see what he can do with a full season here. Like I said, 21 points in 49 games. Just out of nowhere, just said, I figured it out. It's Pittsburgh. This is where it all happens. Again, we don't look at the plus minus this year for everybody.
Anybody. Yeah.
But if that all organizes itself and this sort of pace remains into next season, I'm trying to find any other good, there's nothing bad on his stat line. I mean, other than maybe games played just by sheer fact of injury, everything else is decent enough, especially for a bottom 6 player on this team. I just think it's hilarious. He had 1 point before the trade and came in and said, here's 20.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when I look at him and I think, 6 out of his 10 goals are game winning, then you also have to think of the fact that it's the Penguins this year, which means 6 of their 33 total wins, he scored the game winning goal. That's 18% for a guy that was essentially traded for nothing midway through the season. Sorry to Jordan Frasca. I think that's who went the other way in this trade. But, you picked him up because, in essence, Nashville was done with him. He was a first rounder that fell from grace, that they wanted to move on from. You picked him up, and he came and scored 18% of your game-winning goals from that point. I mean, from that point on, you'd have to imagine, too, they had won at least 5 games. I don't know. At that point of the season, it might have been 6 or 7, but, you look at what Phil Tomasino has done, and he's been one of the silver linings of the 2024-25 season. This might be the last award that he's up for, but, I think deserving of the 6% vote at the very least that he got from the listeners. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube by searching Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.